One of the mitzvahs of the night of Pesach, we have the mitzvah matzah, maror, drinking the 4 cups, sipor, yitzias mitzrayim, the mitzvah of telling over the exodus from Egypt. Even though we have a mitzvah all year round of zechiras yitzias mitzrayim, there's a mitzvah all year round of remembering the exodus from Egypt. Like the Gemara tells us, the Mishnah actually even read in the Haggadah, the machlokas between Ben Zoma and the Chachamim, maskirin yitzias mitzrayim. Everyone agrees during the day there's a biblical mitzvah to remember. At night there's a machlokas Ben Zoma and Chachamim, whether it applies or not. Maybe it applies only to the time of Mashiach, etc. So we have a mitzvah all year round. So the mitzvah of Sipor is just in more detail, among other things. Derech Shiloh of Tshuva. You have to do it in a question-answer form. You verbalize it, etc. So we do many things the night of Pesach to show our freedom, our cheirus. So one of the things we do is recline. The mitzvah of haseba, of reclining. In fact, that's a discussion among the Rishonim and Achronim, whether today, since we don't normally recline when we eat, should we still have to recline today? The conclusion, the bottom line is, the minhag is, and the halach is that we recline. According to the Rambam, we should be reclining the whole meal, the whole seder, but minimally, at least we recline during when we drink the matzah and we drink the wine. In other words, and according, it seems to be a major machlokas rishonim on, let's say you drink the wine or you eat the matzah without reclining. So according to the Rush, it seems to be you have to eat the matzah over again, or you have to drink over. According to the Rambam, no, you don't have to. And the Brisker Rav explains the issue is how do we view the mitzvah of haseba? Is it a detail in the mitzvah of matzah, a detail within the mitzvah of drinking the wine, or no? Or is it an independent mitzvah? There's a mitzvah of eating matzah, drinking wine, and there's a separate independent mitzvah of reclining. The Rush holds it's a detail, it's part and parcel of the mitzvah of matzah. Not only are they concerned with how much matzah you eat, but in the manner and the way you eat it. So too with the wine, not only are we interested in how much you drink, but we're also concerned with the manner. And therefore the Rush says if you don't eat the matzah reclining, you have to go and eat another piece. And similarly with wine, and the Rambam disagrees. Halach l'maisa, by wine, we make a compromise. Not because it's a fundamental difference, because it's a practical difference. That the bottom line halach is during the first 2 cups, if you forget to recline, you go back and have another cup. But on the last 2 cups, we say you don't have to go back. And that's just because for a technical issue of during the first 2 cups you're allowed to eat. You made kiddush and it's part of the meal. Strictly speaking, you can drink wine during the Haggadah part. The minhag is not to, but therefore if you have to drink, so then we tell you go ahead and drink another cup. But once you have the afikomen, so we don't eat anymore. So therefore, the Tosas and the Posca make a chiluk between the first 2 cups and the last 2 cups. That you go back and recline again for the first 2, but not for the last 2. So the Gemara has an interesting discussion about, do you recline on the 4 cups? So Rav Nachman says, so it's 2 opinions within Rav Nachman if you recline at all on the 4 cups. It seems to be a contradiction. The Gemara says, go kasha, there's no contradiction. One opinion is talking about the first 2 cups, and the other opinion, one opinion is talking about the first 2 cups, and another opinion is talking about the second 2 cups. Of course, the Gemara doesn't know which 2 cups are in either direction, so we don't know which 2. The Gemara says, Rav Nachman says you recline on 2 out of 4. The problem is we don't know which 2. So therefore, the Gemara concludes at first glance like it should. Since we're not sure which 2, so we tell you to recline on all 4, which at first glance makes sense, because you don't know what 2, so you recline on all 4. comes along the famous question of the Ran. The Ran in Arvei Psachim says, I don't understand the Gemara's conclusion, because we know we have a famous principle, and we discussed it yesterday as well. Safek daraisa l'chumra, a doubt regarding a biblical law was strict on. Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula, a doubt regarding a rabbinic law we're lenient on. So in other words, if we're not sure and we're doing a mitzvah min Torah, so we go back and do it again. But if there's a doubt regarding a fulfillment of a rabbinical mitzvah, so we say, Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula, you don't have to go back. So the Ran asked, drinking the 4 cups of wine is only a rabbinical mitzvah. Matzah is biblical, and maror is rabbinical today, but at least one point it was biblical. But Daled Kosis, the 4 cups are always rabbinical, and Haseva, reclining, is also rabbinical. So what do you mean? What about the principle Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula? Why are we reclining on all 4? We should pick 2 out of the 4, or we'll see, whatever we should pick, but picking all 4 shouldn't be the conclusion. What happened to the principle of Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula? That's the famous question of the Ran on this Gemara on Kuf Ches in Psachim. So the Ran himself gives 2 explanations, and some other Rishonim give a couple more. So we'll go through a couple of answers to this question, which will help us fundamentally understand the principle of Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula better. When do we apply it? When don't we? What's some rules involved? So the first answer of the Ran is, he says, really, you're right. Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula, we can be lenient, but so why are we then? Why is the Gemara machmir? You have to recline on all 4. So he says because it's not a big deal to go ahead and move a little bit this way and recline. It's a general rule. It doesn't take. It's a milsa, something that doesn't have much tircha. It doesn't take much effort and burden. So therefore, if the Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula is a b'di'evet thing, what could you do? You did it. It's not a lechatchila thing. You don't specifically rely on Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula. If you could take away the doubt in a simple manner, you might as well. So that's what the Ran says. What's the big deal? You go ahead and to go ahead and now recline on all 4 cups, big deal. So instead of picking 2 out of 4, just recline on all. It's not a major issue, and therefore the Ran claims we don't apply Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula on something which is simple to do. And the Mishnah Berurah himself takes this Ran and applies it to all mitzvahs, not just Daled Kosos. He says that as a general rule. But any time you have an opportunity to clarify and do all the mitzvahs properly, you should recline on it, it's not a big deal to do. You should apply the principle of Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula. Therefore, he says, you're right. You don't have to, but there's the reason the Gemara is telling you should, because we don't apply Safek d'Rabbanan l'kula when it's something simple to do. But you're right. But the evidence, according to this answer, if you drank the wine without reclining, you would be fine. But he's just saying something is l'chatchila, you should.
In the time of the Gemara, everybody reclined when they were eating.
Right, you reclined all the time, right?
Right. So then the 4 cups isn't really an issue as to reclining while drinking, as far as the Gemara should be concerned, because in Brachot, and I don't know the number, it talks about the reclining, and specifically it talks with respect to the most sage or wise guy, and then the next one, and where they all sit, they're all reclining.
Right.
So why the concern about the rule of reclining, when in any event they did it, and we just follow it?
No, that's working with the Ran. The Ran is saying it's not a hard. I mean, that doesn't mean reclining was something was a norm, but that was also a norm among wealthy people, prominent people. Among the poor and the other people, wasn't this like the different things we do the night of Pesach that we have to show our freedom? In fact, that's what Tosas and Arvei Psachim brings down. The Mishnah says even a poor person has to recline. So the question is, why would I think a poor person didn't have to recline? So one answer Tosas gives, because It's one thing if you have a pillow and a couch to recline on. If you have a
Yeah.
stone floor, I might think that's not, that's not something you're going to do. Kamashman, even a poor person, right? But we do things the night of Pesach. That's the, the wealthy, the quote-unquote higher level, but not everyone used to recline. That's the Ran saying it's not a big deal to recline, therefore you should go for it. The second answer to the Ran is a much more fundamental, is much more lumdiship. He likes the second answer better. That he says, you can't apply the principle of Safek Drabanan L'Kula here. You have to recline on all four. Why? Dawud Kosis is Drabanan, reclining is Drabanan, why not Safek Drabanan L'Kula? He says like this, because it's what he calls a Safek Hashakol. In other words, I have no reason to pick, because the Gemara gives reason for both sides. So I have no reason to pick the first two cups over the last two cups. I can't say, let me do the first two over the... Therefore he says like this, you get to the first two cups, oh wait, great. Safek Drabanan L'Kula, I'm not going to recline. Okay. I get to the last two cups, great. Safek Drabanan L'Kula, I'm not going to recline. If I apply the principle of Safek Drabanan L'Kula, I'm going to uproot the mitzvah of reclining L'Gamre. And everyone agrees that's wrong. Rav Nachman clearly said you have to recline on 2 out of the 4. And since I can't pick 2 out of the 4 because there's no compelling reason to pick the first 2 over the last 2, so I have no right to pick either the first 2 or last 2. So the concern is you're going to apply, if you apply the principle, you'll be left with nothing. And clearly we don't apply Safek Drabanan L'Kula, but the expression is B'makam tarte desasre. Tarte means 2. Sasre, steer, a contradiction. It's classically used, we just changed the clocks last night, and so now in many places in North America they'll be making what they call early Shabbos. Of course we make early Shabbos every week, Tosefes Shabbos, but early Shabbos meaning after Plag HaMincha. Hopefully we'll be starting this week. But so they point out that, so what do you have to be careful? Because it's a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda Chachamim, when is the last time to daven mincha, and hence, when is the earliest time to daven ma'ariv? So Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is, you could daven mincha up until Plag HaMincha, so let's assume on a 6 to 6 day, so an hour and a quarter before sunset, 4:45 would be the last time to daven mincha, according to Rabbi Yehuda. I can look it up exactly when Plag HaMincha is on my eyes, man. But 4:45 hour example will be Plag HaMincha, and then according to Rabbi, right afterwards you could daven ma'ariv. And according to the Chachamim, you could daven mincha until 6 o'clock sunset, and then whatever, preferably davening ma'ariv at nightfall, but at least after sunset. So there's a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda Chachamim. So what would be an example of a tarte desasre? Is, let's say I daven mincha at 5 o'clock. So if I daven mincha at 5 o'clock, I'm following the opinion of the Chachamim. According to Rabbi, it's too late to daven mincha. It's after Plag HaMincha. So I'm following the mincha of the Chachamim, and then I daven ma'ariv at 5:15. So I'm taking the ma'ariv of Rabbi Yehuda. That you can't do. That's what they call a tarte desasre. In other words, you can't daven in the same time zone mincha ma'ariv, because mincha is screaming out its daytime. Ma'ariv is screaming at its nighttime, so that's what we try to avoid. Again, the poskim talk about if it's the only minyan in town, what's better to do? Is it better to daven by yourself in the appropriate time? Or if the only minyan you have, that's a further discussion. But l'chatchila, it's best, you should be able to daven mincha ma'ariv in the appropriate. So that's the same thing here. I can't say Safek Drabanan L'Kula if it's going to lead me to the wrong conclusion. I definitely have to recline on 2 out of 4. If I take the principle of Safek Drabanan L'Kula, I'll end up not reclining at all. Hence, the Ran says we cannot apply the principle of Safek Drabanan L'Kula. So it's a fundamental principle. It's not that it's okay if you do it. You say Safek Drabanan L'Kula doesn't apply here. Because if you apply it, you'll end up with the wrong answer, the wrong result. In fact, this is a famous Ran. It's a famous tshuva in the Beis Halevi. In fact, one of the Rabbanim, someone asked the Beis Halevi this question a while ago. He says, we know today it's a whole discussion, but we paskin today Shemitah is only a mitzvah d'Rabbanan today. The laws of keeping Shemitah in the land of Israel, it's only rabbinical. So the person has to Beis HaLevi, there's a machlokes among the Rambam and the Gaonim exactly how you count Shemitah. In other words, let's say, does Yovel count within the 7th year? Is Yovel year 49 or year 50? In other words, is it year 49 with Shemitah, then you start counting one again? Or do you go one, you do 50, then you go back? So it's a machlokes among the Rishonim, how do you count Shemitah? So the person has to Beis HaLevi, we should have to keep Shemitah today. I'm sure we'll have a lot of followers to that. You don't have to keep Shemitah today because Shemitah is d'Rabbanan. It's a suffix which year is Shemitah. Let's apply the principle suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. So Henry's on to so clearly he didn't learn the Ran and Arvei Psachim, as Henry's alluding to. You can't do that because we'll come to this year, Shemitah, Safek Rabbanan L'Kula. Every year is a Safek Rabbanan L'Kula. You uproot the mitzvah. Everyone agrees Shemitah applies midrabanan. The question is which year. So you can't apply a Safek Rabbanan L'Kula in a scenario where you're going to uproot the mitzvah. In fact, that's the Rambam. We just celebrated Purim not too long ago. So we know the Mishnah tells us in Megillah, the different days where different towns read the Megillah. So Megillah, Nikras, Piyid Aleph, Yebez, and Gimel, we don't have that today, but in the villages, 11, 12, and 13. But most of us observe Purim and read the Megillah on the 14th. And Yerushalayim, or any walled city from the time of Yeshua ben Nun, reads it on the 15th. So the question is, what happens if there's a town which is a suffix Mukmas Chama Yeshua ben Nun? We're not sure if this town was a walled city during the time of Yeshua ben Nun. It's a suffix. We're not sure whether this town was walled during the time of Yeshua ben Nun. So when should they read the Megillah? So the Rambam says you should read on the 14th. You only have to read on the 14th. The Rambam says you read on the 14th and the 15th. Safek d'Rabbanan l'Kula. Megillah is only d'Rabbanan. So why do we read Megillah the 14th and the 15th? So that's what they point out, because if you're going to say each day Safek d'Rabbanan l'Kula, you'll end up not reading at all. So therefore, the Rambam writes the same principle. You go ahead. That's one possibility in the Rambam. It's interesting. They point out the Ran himself says you only read on the 14th. The Ran says in a case where a town is a suffix Muchas Chama, you only read it. So everyone points out it seems to be an apparent contradiction in the Ran. The Ran, when it comes to the 4 cups, when in doubt, recline on all 4. But when it comes to a doubt regarding reading the Megillah, we're not sure if it's a walled city from the time of Yoshua ben Nun. The Ran says you only read on the 14th. How do we reconcile the Ran? Why not? To be a suffix Rabbanan l'Kul b'makam tartei desastre, you should read both days.
Well, it's not uprooting the mitzvah because you're still reading the Megillah.
When you're reading you're picking, right?
Well, you're still reading on one day, though.
Right, that's true. You're reading on the 14th. That's true. But they point out the Mishnah Lamelech and others is there's a fundamental difference between the two. In the Gemara, when we're talking about Haseba, but along the lines I'm saying that when we're talking about the mitzvah Haseba, the Gemara is talking about setting up, instituting this mitzvah Haseba. We're talking about for everyone now. When should we recline? Which cups of wine do we have to recline? So if you conclude Safek Rabbanan Kula, you'll be uprooting. No one's ever going to recline again because right now they're being koveya the halacha. Which cups you have? So therefore, when you're being koveya the halacha, you can't say Safek Rabbanan Kula because then no one's going to. You're uprooting the mitzvah of reclining. When it comes to Megillah, we're not setting it. The halacha is set up. If you're a walled city, you're reading on the 15th. If you're a non-walled city, so what this specific city does isn't going to change anything. We're talking about one specific city. So if you read on the 14th, that's what the majority, most read, so you go with the 14th. We're not affecting the takana in general, but in Dalet Kosos, it's going to affect what everyone's going to do. So that's why the round, when it comes, he only says, Safek Rabbanan l'Kula b'makam tartei desastre is when you're being koveya halacha. But a specific town, we're not concerned. So that's the famous Ran, that we can't say Safek Rabbanan L'Kula, else you'll end up not reclining at all. So those are the two answers of the Ran. The Shiltei HaGiborim, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is the mitzvah of reclining, is it a mitzvah on its own, or is a mitzvah part of L'Zecher Sipur Mitzrayim, or something else that you have to do?
Right, so go on.
Because if it's a mitzvah on its own, then I understand this whole idea of if you have to Safek D'Rabbanan, Safek D'Oraisa. But if it's a mitzvah that's connected to something else, so if to make yourself feel more cherut and more zecher to Mitzrayim, and that's why we recline, and then that would make sense to me that's why you should extend it to all 4 cups, because it's a mitzvah d'oraisa to be zecher to Mitzrayim.
Right, so that's right. So the simple, right, that's the machlokas, the Rush and the Rambam, according to the Brisker Rav, how you view the mitzvah Vaseba. It's a part and parcel of the mitzvah, or it's independent.
Okay, yeah.
So that's one. And then there's a separate issue. We assume simple Pshat Haseba is D'Rabbanan, but some want to make your point. They say it's true Haseba per se might be D'Rabbanan, but we're doing it in the context of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim and therefore it takes on a status of D'Oraisa, and that's why there are some who make that suggestion. Yeah, that'd be a 6th Pshat, right? But that's some Achronim. The Sheres Yosef brings it down as the actual mitzvah reclining to Rabbanan, but what it represents, it represents Chayras and biblical. That's why we're machmar. Some do suggest that. Okay. Very good. The Shiltei HaGiborim offers another explanation. He says, when we say Safek Rabbanan L'Kula, we say, let's say we have a machlokas in the Gemara between 2 different rabbis. So we have a principle, Elul v'Elul Divro Kim Chayav. It's not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter, we're going to pick one to follow, but that's the other. Beis Shammai is not wrong. We just follow Beis Hillel or whoever's having the machlokas. So when do we say Elul v'Elul? That's when you're talking about 2 different rabbis arguing. But you have the Gemara over here is talking about, it was the name of Rav Nachman. It was, the people come to the shir and Henry says, I said one thing. Tom said, I said another. They're not both right. Either one of you got it right. Maybe you are both right, depending, you're talking about 2 different things. But the point being is, it's not a case where they're both right. One's quoting the rabbi right, one's quoting him wrong. So when do we say Safek Rabbanan L'Kula in a case where it's 2 different rabbis? So either way, we could rely on the other opinion, because one of them, they're both right. It's a matter of how we pass, since there's more room to be lenient. But in a case where it's 2 opinions that Rav Nachman said, so then you can't say Safek Rabbanan L'Kula. And there's one last answer I'll close with. Abaji Yosef has an interest. If you have to look at the Gemara, but he says the Gemara doesn't pass like Rav Nachman. It's not a Safek Rabbanan. The Gemara concludes against Rav Nachman. It's true, Rav Nachman says you only have to recline on 2. We don't pass like Rav Nachman, and that's why the Gemara is saying we recline on all 4. That's not the simple reading of the Gemara, but that's an interesting explanation he quotes in his Haggadah.